On a beautiful summer's day in August 1998, number 5637 departs from Cranmore Station. The distinctive Great Western blast from the chimney echoes around the Somerset countryside, evoking strong memories of a country branch line, which has now passed into history. The branch, known affectionately as the Strawberry Line, was connected at one end with the Great Western Railway West of England main line at Whittam, and with the Bristol to Taunton main line at Yatton. A weekday service of 5 to 7 trains a day operated throughout the life of the line. Standard Great Western locomotives were used. Broad gauge 440s and saddle tanks operated in the early days. Homer, Virgil and Seneca were known to have been used between Whittam and Wells. The gauge conversion brought saddle tanks, and the pre-war years brought pannier and prairie tanks to the line. GWR diesel rail cars appeared in 1946, and under British Railways, Ivat and Standard 262 tank engines also worked the line. The East Somerset Railway broad gauge line from Whittam to Shepton Mallet opened on November the 9th, 1858. The line from Shepton Mallet to the East Somerset terminus at Wells came into use on March the 1st, 1862. Whittam, on the then single-line branch of the Wilts, Somerset and Weymouth Railway, opened on September the 1st, 1856. Services for the East Somerset line to Wells used the bay platform, which was unique in having a wooden overall roof that was built in 1870. Wanstrow, situated 2¼ miles from Whittam, opened in 1860. The station was formed of a small station building upon a single platform and was paid for by local inhabitants, as the East Somerset Railway could not afford to build one. The rear view of the station portrays the building works needed in order to bring the station up to the top of the embankment. Cranmore opened with the line in 1856. The station dealt with considerable limestone traffic from the nearby Waterlip quarry. A GWR train for Whittam enters the station after the turn of the century. The terminal building for the line from Waterlip Quarry can be seen in the background. Wagons belonging to Mendip Mountain quarries and loaded with limestone are seen in this view with the station in the background. The first train to Shepton Mallet was hauled by Homer, a 440 bogie saddle tank. The locomotive was covered in flowers, and the town band played "See the Conquering Hero" as the train arrived. The East Somerset Railway terminus at Wells was on the east side of Priory Road. It was completed on March the 1st, 1862. The Somerset Central Railway, the senior partner of what was to become the Somerset and Dorset Joint Railway, opened its branch from Glastonbury to Wells on March the 15th, 1859, and thus was the first railway to enter the cathedral city. A stone-built station building with an overall roof was provided and known as Priory Road from 1883. The S&D engine shed closed on October the 27th, 1951, followed by closure of the branch to passenger traffic 2 days later. The third and last station to be built was the terminal station of the Bristol and Exeter branch from Yatton and Cheddar, opening on April the 5th, 1870, and remaining a terminus until 1878. When through working between Yatton and Whittam was inaugurated by running over part of the S&D goods yard on the level, although Great Western trains did not call at Priory Road Station until October the 1st, 1934. Built in Draycott stone with the usual decorative barge boards and distinctive roof of alternating bands of plain and patterned tiles, the Bristol and Exeter station at Wells completed the trio of stations in the city. Each station was complete with its own staff, engine and goods sheds. The line from Yatton was completed in 2 stages. Yatton to Cheddar on August the 3rd, 1869, and Cheddar to Wells on April the 5th, 1870. Dating from 1871, Wookey, the first station from Wells towards Yatton, had a single platform complete with timber station building and a small wooden signal cabin. Facilities included a goods shed and a rail connection to the nearby paper mills from 1879 until 1965. Lodge Hill, serving the nearby village of Westbury sub Mendip, was named after a 212-foot mound rising from the flat Cheddar Valley, to avoid confusion with the important junction of the same name in Wiltshire. Draycott Station, with its name set in stone above the doorway and windows, also had a wooden signal cabin on the platform that had a gate wheel for operating the only level crossing between Wells and Yatton. A broad gauge Bristol and Exeter Pearson 440 saddle tank is pictured at Cheddar on the opening day of the line from Yatton. The station was the most elaborate on the whole line, with its grand Brunellian overall roof. A refreshment room was provided for intrepid travellers. Punnets of strawberries are being loaded onto a ventilated van. Loading of strawberries when in season was intensive at stations along the Cheddar Valley, and the busy scene here at Axbridge would be no different at other locations such as Lodge Hill or Draycott. The starting signal is lowered for a Yatton-bound train as the station staff pose for the camera. The station was built on a ledge cut into the side of the Mendip Hills. The Bristol and Exeter signal box, standing on the down platform, was replaced in 1907. The only tunnel on the line was Chute Shelve. Originally named Woodborough, the station at Winscombe was popular with commuters to Bristol. The GWR structure seen here replaced the original Bristol and Exeter timber building in 1905. The old station building was hauled away and then became the village shop. Sandford and Banwell Station was built in the usual solid style of the Bristol and Exeter Railway. Facilities included a goods shed and yard. The goods loop was completed in 1905 and remained until 1964. Rail connection existed from 1935 until 1964 to the Sandford quarry of Roads Reconstruction Limited. The company operated their own Sentinel locomotives. Congersbury Station achieved junction status when the Rington Vale Light Railway opened on December the 4th, 1901. Crucial support for the line had come from the Bristol Waterworks Company, who were on the verge of constructing a large reservoir and pumping station at Blagden. The 6 3/4 mile long line had stations at Rington, Langford, Burrington, and the terminal station was at Blagden. Sidings for coal traffic were laid, serving the Waterworks pumping station. A small siding served the estate of Sir W. H. Wills. The area was known locally as Imperial Valley, as much of the local wealth was generated by tobacco. The initial service on the line consisted of 4 trains per day, one of which ran as a mixed train. Passenger services were withdrawn from the line from September the 14th, 1931. The broad gauge Bristol and Exeter Railway opened from Bristol to Bridgewater on June the 14th, 1841. Yatton opened as Clevedon Road, but was subsequently renamed in 1847 when the branch to Clevedon opened on July the 28th. When the line to Cheddar was opened in 1869, a bay for the trains was provided on the downside of the main line. Now for a nostalgic look back at the Cheddar Valley line. We start our journey at Shepton Mallet, the station being situated at the end of the High Street and more convenient for the townspeople than the Somerset and Dorset station at Charlton Road. A 262 tank engine arrives with a passenger train, and after the passengers have boarded, the train then departs for Whittam. A GWR water column and lower quadrant signals reflect the former GWR ownership of the line. The train now crosses the main road at Kilver Street level crossing on the outskirts of Shepton Mallet and passes the small ground frame that controlled the gates. The East Somerset line was carried over the Somerset and Dorset main line by two bridges. Peter Wood, former steam fireman from Wells Shed, recalls a nickname given by railwaymen to Cranmore.
Cranmore Station was never ever called Cranmore, I don't think by anybody on British Railways. It's always known as Siberia. I've seen wagons marked up Siberia. Bleak, wind howls up that Vale of Avalon and hits it. Terrible, cold, nasty, but Siberia.
Climbing the 1 in 56 incline to Maysdown Bridge, we pass through Dalting Cutting, from which the stone for the original Cranmore station was excavated when the line was constructed. Arriving at Cranmore, we view the bitumen rail tanks that were unloaded here, the contents being transported by road tankers to the local quarries for use in the tar-making process. The camera pans across to the down platform with its timber-built waiting room. The signal box, dating from 1904, was closed on May the 17th, 1963. Two and a quarter miles from Cranmore, we stop at the small station of Wanstrow. Typically, no passengers await the train. A short goods loop and cattle dock opened west of the station in January 1927. We are now running down the bank towards Whittam and the main line. The signal box with its attendant signals hoves into view, and we run into the branch bay alongside the water tank. The station was on the superb West of England main line, and a succession of express trains would pass through, especially on summer Saturdays, although only local and Weymouth services stopped here. The station received the suffix Somerset in 1958 to avoid confusion with the station in Essex with the same name. An express thunders through, and a new DMU in green cat's whisker livery rattles through on the down main line, followed by another up service running through the station. Collet 060, number 2217, arrives from Frome with a two-coach train and after running through reverses into the branch bay with the guard giving the tip when to stop. A 6-car DMU arrives from Weymouth and after depositing parcels and what few passengers have alighted, pulls away to the next stop at Frome. We now depart from Whittam and return to the branch, climbing the 1 in 47 gradient to Wanstrow, where as before no passengers await to board our train. Paul Fry started his own railway career at Wells Priory Road station. He now recalls an incident concerning a goat with an appetite for glue.
I can remember one instance when we had a consignment of about 20 or 30 cartons came down to go away, because we had to stick ledger labels on all of them, and we used to use a great glue pot with a big brush, and we used to deliberately paste the glue on and stick the label on that, you see, and then we put all these things in the guard's van to go to Glastonbury, and there was also a goat that was travelling by train that day, and they put the goat in the guard's van. Well, appears that on the way out to Glastonbury, the goat took a fancy to the glue and licked all the labels off, not only the ledger labels that we stuck on, but also the destination labels as well. So by the time they got to Glastonbury, they couldn't decide where half these things had to go. So they had to come all the way back to Wales by the next train, and we had to ring up Claire's and say, we've got some parcels down here. We knew they'd come from you, but we don't know where they've got to go. So we had to get some new labels and stick on, but I think the goat must have taken a fancy to the glue that they'd used, which was rather amusing.
The train enters the down platform at Cranmore Station, whilst a small girl waves excitedly at the camera. We roll through the sylvan Somerset countryside behind our Class 22. Wisps of steam drift around the carriages. Haymaking is in full swing during the fine weather, and Shepton Mallet Station appears, with a good view of the signal box and quarry wagons in the sidings bound for Dulcote Quarry. A split-screen Morris 1000 van in GPO livery stands on the up platform, with mail bags being loaded aboard the train. The advanced starting signal gives us a clear road to Wells as we run down the bank, upon which freight trains had their work cut out, struggling up from Dulcote and Wells. Paul Fry now recalls the day when too many passengers climbed aboard an ex-GWR diesel rail car.
Someone came down and said that he wanted to book a Sunday school outing to Weston-super-Mare. So I said, yes, okay, and I told him how much it would cost, and come the day of the outing, he arrived with all these 60 children like that. But the thing that I failed to remember, which I ought to have known, was that the train they were going on was a limited accommodation diesel rail car. And when the train pulled into the station, there was all these children like that, and they all crammed on board this diesel rail car, and it was totally overloaded. And I can always remember it going out to Tucker Street Station with a cloud of blue smoke around it where the engines were having to work a little bit harder. Diesel engines would have to go. So I got my leg pulled about that, something cruel for many, many years.
The level crossing gates at Priory Road are closed to road traffic, and the remaining stub of the Somerset and Dorset from Glastonbury is seen to the left. The fireman and signalman exchange single-line tokens. As Wells Tucker Street Station and signal box come into view, carriage doors open and the train comes to a halt. A 262 tank engine overfills with water, and safety valve lift in preparation for a run to Yatton. Wells, English's smallest city, and perhaps the most beautiful, takes its name from the underground streams that feed St Andrew's Well in the grounds of the Bishop's Palace. This freshwater supply first attracted the church here more than 1,000 years ago. The west front of the cathedral is awe-inspiring, towering to over 125 feet, and contains nearly 400 statues, the plan of Bishop Jocelyn Trotman, who died in 1242, 40 years before the completion of his grand design. The rare medieval clock inside the cathedral features a 24-hour astronomical face, upon which the knights strike the quarter. Ducks swimming in the moat of the bishop's palace tempt children to feed them scraps of bread, and pedestrians stroll through Vicar's Close, the only completely inhabited medieval street left in Britain. We now return to Tucker Street Station and glimpse Mr. Richard Hayes, the last station master to hold that post at Wells. Water columns were provided at both ends of the platforms, and trains from Yatton were designated as down trains until reaching Wells, whence they became up trains to Whittam. Ivat 262 tank number 41304 pushes its coaching stock forwards and then reverses alongside the up platform for Yatton. The fireman accepts the single line token from the signalman, and with safety valves lifting, the locomotive pulls away under Burcock Road Bridge. Bristol and Exeter goods shed appears to our right as we leave Wells. After leaving Wookey Station, we enter the fertile Cheddar Valley and go on towards Lodge Hill Station. Paul Fry recounts the story of the clergyman.
During the blackout, there used to be no lights, of course, were showing at all. And it was jet black outside, and the train came down from Shepton, and the driver misjudged the station a little bit and went too far out, and in fact the coaches were not under the overall roof, they were beyond the overall roof, and we didn't know what had happened. We went out and had a look at the train, and nobody seemed to get out, but we went back in the booking office, and about 5 minutes later the door suddenly opened, and in the doorway was an apparition. It was a clergyman who was covered from head to foot in cow manure, and he was bleeding from the forehead, and his first words he uttered, which really shocked me, he says, "I've just fallen down a bloody great hole." And what in fact he'd done, he'd got out on the part of the platform that was unlit, and instead of turning right to go into the station and through the normal way out, he'd walked straight across and he'd fallen into the cattle loading dock where all the manure was washed down. So the poor man dropped about 3 foot into this mud, and he was not amused. He put in a claim for his clothes and all that, and we never heard very much more after that, but it was always upset me to think that the vicar should swear.
Lodge Hill appears, and we view this little-used station in its final years before resuming our journey and enter the grand Brunellian roof station of Cheddar. Peter Wood, former fireman from Wells Locomotive Shed, recalls the 7:05 a.m. Wells to Yatton passenger train.
That train was set to diesel railcar timings, and I think it was only allowed 37 minutes to Yatton with 8 stops, I think it was. And you work that out, it's about 18 miles.
Yes.
So the general idea was that the fireman kept a good lookout going through Wookie Station. If he couldn't see anybody, he just kept going. Same with Lodge Hill, because very few people ever
That's
got
right,
on.
yeah.
But Drake, there was always passengers, but you could pick up a few minutes there. So you had to go like the clappers, basically, to get to Yatton on time, because it was, again, a book connection. And it was, if you were late, it was considered to be not very funny by, we had a lot of commuters from Winscombe.
Yes, I remember that.
Yeah. And they relied on that. We'd have a train full by the time we got to Yatton.
Cheddar Gorge, with its limestone cliffs towering to over 400 feet high, and the famous caves, have long been a tourist haunt, with cream teas and cheddar cheese. The cheddar pink, a rare wild flower that only grows wild in the gorge, can be found here. These nostalgic scenes, filmed in the 1950s, show a variety of classic coaches and cars, all of which would be considered collectible items today. The line runs alongside Axbridge Reservoir, with plenty of boating activity upon the calm waters. At Axbridge Station, we view the line dipping down towards Cheddar at 1 in 100. The signal box, dating from 1907, controlling the passing loop, stands at the end of the down platform, with the brooding Mendip Hills in the background. St John's Church dominates the town square of Axbridge. The Mendips were once the royal hunting grounds of King John. The oldest building in the square is known as King John's Hunting Lodge. Guard Mac Biggs ushers a passenger aboard the locomotive, and with fireman Peter Wood looking out from the cab window, the train pulls away up the grade towards Yatton as the starting signal slams to danger in its wake. After leaving Axbridge, the line climbs at 1 in 75 to Shootshell, and the picture darkens as we enter the 180-yard tunnel and exit into the sunshine, viewing a cricket match being played alongside the line. Peter Wood now describes the summer specials from Wells to Weston-super-Mare.
During the summer timetable, there was another train from Wells. It was an extra trip that was worked in on that early shift passenger. Left Wells at about 10:30 and had a direct connection for Weston-super-Mare, and that would be packed. We always had to take an extra 2 cars for that, 4 cars that train was, until the last day it ran. And Birkett Road Estate would empty onto that train. Well, what was the competition? Single-decker bus?
Absolutely.
They'd be in Weston by 11:30.
Yeah.
I mean, and it was something ridiculous, like 3 and 6pence return for adults.
The countryside levels out as we're near the end of our journey at Yatton. The branch junction is seen to good effect from Yatton's up platform. A Western diesel hydraulic in maroon livery speeds through with an up express. Punnets of strawberries lie stacked on the porter's barrows as a green warship diesel rattles through heading for Taunton with a freight train consisting of press-flow cement hoppers and other wagons. The Clevedon branch signals are seen to the right as another warship enters the station with a stopping train and then pulls away towards Bristol under clear signals. closure notices detailing the fate of the line from Yatton to Whittam have now appeared. Driver Harry Viles from Wells Locomotive Shed applies white paint to the smokebox number plate of 3218 at Whittam on September the 7th, 1963, the final day of passenger operation, with the branch officially closing on the following Monday, September the 9th. Harry Viles recalls the final day.
There was a lot of people about, and if they'd have travelled on the trains like they did that day, we would never closed.
A North British Type 2 diesel arrives at Draycott with one of the last strawberry specials on the branch. The vans are shunted into the small goods yard, while the staff, including Wells signalman Harold Francis, seen here in the green hat, carefully load the succulent cargo. The loaded train then pulls away over the level crossing towards Cheddar. Whittam looking towards Frome on May the 31st, 1969. The station has now been swept away after closure to passengers on October the 6th, 1966. The signalman coming down the steps shows us the single line staff as used for the section from Whittam to Cranmore. Also on May the 31st, 1969, the RCTS ran a special train, the Cheddar Valley Scenic, and the DMU is seen approaching Whittam. At Kilver Street Crossing, the bare foundations of the ground frame can be seen as we approach and cross the main road. Shepton Mallet stands derelict and unused. Goods traffic ceased on July the 13th, 1964, except for the limestone trains from Dulcet Quarry, which continued to pass through until October 1969. We now enter the weed-infested and trackless East Somerset Yard, which once contained the locomotive shed and goods sidings. Pedestrians and a Ford Thames trader tipper await our passage over Priory Road level crossing, and we run past the desolate island platform at Tucker Street Station, upon which the signal box has been demolished, and run under Burkett Road Bridge, whilst another Thames trader passes over. Sheep unused to trains run for cover alongside the line, and the train crosses over Draycott level crossing, which has been opened by the guard, and arrives at Cheddar, from which the roof had been removed in 1964. Enthusiasts ramble around the deserted tracks and station building until it is time to return to Whittam with the last ever passenger train to depart from Cheddar. The line closed entirely between Yatton and Cheddar on October the 1st, 1964, and between Cheddar and Dulcet Quarry on April the 26th, 1969. St Leonard's Church at Rodney Stoke is viewed from the passing train as we return through the Cheddar Valley. Approaching Tucker Street Station, the train runs past the abandoned Bristol and Exeter goods shed. The station is now used as a builder's yard. A private siding at the end of the down platform served Messrs. A. Sheldon and Sons from 1936 until 1966. Motor vehicles cross over Priory Road in the distance as we pass the Somerset and Dorset goods shed. The 3 goods yards at Wells closed on July the 13th, 1964. The train awaits the passage of a Vauxhall Cresta at Kilver Street level crossing, and the guard, complete with red flag, stops the road traffic. Rusty cars litter the abandoned goods shed and yard as we view the bare track bed of the Somerset and Dorset main line at Charlton Road Station. Bitumen tanks were handled at Cranmore until the traffic ceased in 1985. The RCTS Special arrives back at Whittam and returns to London via Taunton and Bristol. The signal box at Whittam was swept away on November the 26th, 1984, with the opening of the new Westbury panel box, and is known today as East Somerset Junction. The station sign proclaims Yatton for Clevedon, although trains have not run to the Bristol Channel Resort since 1966. The former Clevedon Bay is now a car park, but the station buildings have hardly altered with the passage of time. Number 3702 will no longer be seen on the Cheddar branch train. The former branch bay has also been converted into a car park. A high-speed train in the livery of Virgin Trains speeds through, heading for Taunton and the west. Weeds and bushes now cover the land once used by the Clevedon and Cheddar Valley trains. Of Congersbury, once the junction of the line to Blagdon, nothing remains except for pieces of platform edging, and only memories exist of Prairie and Pannier tanks arriving from Wells, and the steam rail motors departing to Rington and Burrington. .517 Class 042 tank number 540 awaits departure from Blagdon on May the 22nd, 1929. The station today seems set in a time warp, as if awaiting the return of the little engine from Congersbury. The station buildings at Sandford and Banwell have been superbly restored by the Sandford Stone Company, the architecture of the buildings being reflected in the quality of the garden stone products manufactured here. The station site at Winscombe, so well used by commuters to Bristol, lies forgotten and overgrown. What price now for a train to Bristol instead of the congested A38? The 180-yard-long tunnel at Shootsheld is now part of a public footpath from Yatton. The station buildings and goods shed at Axbridge standing alongside the Axbridge bypass, with former track bed now covered in tar macadam, reminding us of our lack of foresight in the haste to close so many branch lines in the 1960s. Cheddar Station, another surviving building, is known today as Brunel's Stoneworks. It is now used by Wells Cathedral stonemasons and echoes to the sound of stone cutting as the dressed stone is carved into exquisite designs, keeping the heritage of Wells Cathedral and other ecclesiastical buildings alive. The craftsmanship of the stonemasons who built the station so long ago is still evident. Draycott, another superbly restored station, still complete with its carved name set in stonework, is used as a holiday home for visitors to the Cheddar Valley. Only the goods shed remains at Lodge Hill, the station buildings being removed and used in the construction of the new station complex at Cranmore, completed in 1991. Materials were also used from Wells Priory Road goods shed. The station has been demolished at Wookey, but the goods shed remains, and St Cuthbert's paper mill, once served by the railway, can be seen in the distance. All traces of the railway at Wells, except for the surviving Bristol and Exeter goods shed, have now been obliterated by the relief road. Shepton Mallet High Street station still survives, but not in the way envisaged by the East Somerset Railway on the opening day in 1858. The crossing keeper's house, where trains no longer cross, still survives at Kilver Street, and the bridges that once carried the branch line over the Somerset and Dorset Railway still stand in situ. Mendip Vale Station, on the present-day East Somerset Railway, opened on June the 23rd, 1985, and forms the terminus of the line 2 miles from Cranmore. Freight wagons stand at the end of the head shunt, marking possible extension of the line. Merrifield Lane Halt, near the former Dalton Stone siding, was constructed by the East Somerset Railway Volunteers in 1981, and from 1980 until June 1985 was the terminus of the line. A siding is in use here for the storage of freight wagons. Driver Alan Jeffreys, who began his railway footplate career in the Somerset and Dorset engine shed at Bath Green Park, opens the regulator and pulls swiftly away, while fireman Dick Masters feeds the firebox. Cranmore West, comprising a prefabricated concrete platform, was recovered from Ilton Halt on the Taunton to Chard branch line. The East Somerset Railway locomotives are stabled and maintained in the brick-built engine shed and workshop, constructed to a traditional design. Although locomotives of this class did not work on the branch, number 5637, on loan from the Swindon and Cricklade Railway, gives a GWR atmosphere to the present line. The cast iron gents' toilet, once a common sight at GWR stations, still survives, and the original station building is still in use. Goods traffic, except for the bitumen tanks, ceased at Cranmore on January the 17th, 1966. And with the withdrawal of the bitumen traffic in 1985, the East Somerset Railway was at last able to steam their trains into the station. Stable coaches await attention in the spacious sidings constructed in 1904. The new station building, dating from 1991, includes a buffet shop, art gallery and offices. The line from Cranmore leads us to the massive Foster Yeoman-owned Merehead Quarry, from which vast tonnages of limestone are conveyed by rail, hauled by Foster Yeoman and ARC General Motors Class 59 locomotives, working jointly under the banner of Mendip Rail. A General Motors switcher, seen here in the background, is used for shunting. On a very wet weekend in 1998, Foster Yeoman celebrated their 75th anniversary, and visiting steam locomotives included two Class 9Fs, numbers 92-212 from the Great Central and 92-203 Black Prince from Cranmore. Class 59 Kenneth J. Painter has suffered a failure and is seen here being pushed into the maintenance shed at Merehead by Class 58, number 58001, Worksop Depot.